summer of 1943 settled heavily over Camp Crossville, Tennessee. The air hung warm and still as a German soldier stood inside the camp canteen, staring at a glass bottle in his hands as if it were some kind of illusion. Inside, a brown liquid shimmered and hissed softly, tiny bubbles racing toward the neck of the bottle like they were alive. He had never seen anything like it before. 2 years of fighting in North Africa had taught him the language of deprivation. Hard biscuits that broke teeth, ersatz coffee brewed from roasted roots, meals measured not in satisfaction but in survival. Yet here, in the middle of enemy captivity, a guard casually told him the price. 5 cents. The same amount American children paid with their weekly allowance. The soldier lifted the bottle, hesitated, then drank. Sweetness exploded across his tongue. The fizz burned pleasantly. In that instant, something far more powerful than thirst was quenched. Certainty began to crack. That summer, across the United States, more than 370,000 German prisoners of war were encountering a reality that contradicted everything Nazi propaganda had promised them. They had been taught that America was weak, divided, decadent, incapable of sustained effort. Instead, they found ice cream served as a routine dessert. Soft drinks consumed without ceremony. Candy bars so common that guards handed them out casually. These were not luxuries reserved for elites or celebrations. They were everyday items, available to anyone with a few coins. For many German prisoners, these foods were not merely unfamiliar. They were mythical. Entire categories of pleasure had been erased from German civilian life years earlier. Now, in defeat, they discovered abundance. The journey to that revelation began in North Africa. When Axis forces surrendered in Tunisia in May of 1943, nearly 250,000 German and Italian soldiers laid down their arms. These were hardened veterans of desert warfare, men who had driven the British to the brink under Rommel's command. Nazi propaganda had prepared them for brutal treatment, starvation, humiliation. What they received instead, within hours of surrender, were American field rations. The same rations American soldiers complained about contained crackers, processed cheese, candy, fruit bars, instant coffee, sugar tablets, and cigarettes. To men who had survived on minimal rations for months, these emergency meals felt like banquets. At processing camps, the U.S. Army served pancakes dripping with syrup, fresh eggs, and milk. Foods that had vanished from German military diets long before. One German officer later told the International Red Cross that the Americans fed them better than their own army ever had. That confusion, he said, was the beginning of their education. When prisoners were loaded onto Liberty ships bound for the United States, the education intensified. These vessels themselves were lessons in industrial power. Mass-produced at a pace Germany could not comprehend, one ship every 42 hours at peak output, they carried tens of thousands of prisoners across the Atlantic each month. Naval records show that prisoner rations aboard these ships matched or exceeded those of the crew. Fresh bread, meat, vegetables, coffee with sugar and milk. Refrigeration systems kept food fresh for the entire crossing. And then there was the ice cream. On multiple documented occasions, prisoners were served ice cream in the middle of the Atlantic. The ship's log of the USS General M.B. Stewart records that on July 4, 1943, prisoners were given ice cream produced by the ship's onboard machine. For men who had not seen ice cream since before the war, this frozen dessert on the open ocean defied comprehension. It wasn't charity. It was routine. When the ships docked at ports like Norfolk and Newport News, the prisoners encountered an America that simply should not have existed, at least not according to everything they had been told. Norfolk Naval Base stretched across thousands of acres, handling more cargo in a day than major German ports managed in a week. In dockside exchanges, prisoners glimpsed shelves stacked with candy bars from Hershey, Mars, and Nestle. Dozens of varieties, all selling for a nickel. The same price everywhere. The journey inland by train deepened the shock. Instead of cattle cars, prisoners rode in passenger coaches. Dining cars served full meals, fried chicken, vegetables, pie, and coffee. This was not special treatment. This was how Americans traveled. The prison camps themselves exceeded Geneva Convention requirements. Electric lights, hot water, flush toilets, heated barracks. But it was the camp exchanges that delivered the deepest psychological blow. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, candy bars, fresh fruit, ice cream where refrigeration allowed, even beer, low alcohol but freely available. Prisoners earned wages for labor, enough that a single day's pay could buy more sweets than a German civilian might see in months. Coca-Cola became the symbol of it all. In 1943 alone, the company produced 5 billion bottles. A military contract guaranteed that every American serviceman could buy one for 5 cents anywhere in the world. German prisoners watched delivery trucks arrive week after week. They saw vending machines everywhere. Gas stations, factories, schools. Americans drank half a bottle and threw the rest away without thinking. The standardization astounded the technically minded. Coca-Cola tasted exactly the same in Tennessee as it did in Texas or Maine. Syrup manufactured in Atlanta was shipped nationwide, diluted and bottled with precision that challenged every assumption about American inefficiency. Ice cream delivered an even greater shock. In Germany, ice cream had vanished entirely. In American camps, it was considered essential for morale. Hand-cranked freezers turned ice, salt, cream, and sugar into gallons of frozen dessert. By 1944, electric ice cream machines appeared. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, butter pecan. Prisoners could buy ice cream sandwiches for 10 cents. Larger camps ordered dozens of gallons weekly during summer months. Ice in July. Cream and sugar used for pleasure. These priorities were incomprehensible. Sugar itself became a revelation. In Germany, civilians received a few hundred grams per month, when available. In American camps, bowls of sugar sat openly on mess tables. 100-pound bags arrived weekly. Cakes, cookies, pies appeared regularly. One camp discarded hundreds of pounds of hardened sugar rather than salvage it. German prisoners working in the kitchen were reportedly distressed by the waste. Chocolate told the same story. Millions of bars produced monthly. Multiple brands competing. Prisoners discovered that Americans had preferences, casually choosing one chocolate over another. Red Cross parcels added even more luxury. Chocolate, coffee, cheese, cigarettes. Items German civilians could only dream of. Then came Thanksgiving. Every camp served roast turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie. German prisoners ate the same meal as American soldiers. Christmas followed, and with it, civilian generosity. Church groups sent homemade cookies and candy to enemy prisoners. Townspeople delivered treats to camps. Americans whose sons were fighting Germans still chose kindness. That fact alone shattered Nazi ideology more completely than any lecture could. As labor shortages grew, prisoners worked outside camps, witnessing American food production firsthand. Orchards producing tons of fruit for decoration. Canneries rejecting edible food for minor blemishes. Sugar beet farms yielding more than entire German regions. Prisoners learned the numbers. Millions of tons of sugar annually. Milk delivered daily to schools. Children buying ice cream at lunch while German children went hungry. In diners, Prisoners saw a factory worker and a banker eating identical meals for identical prices. Democracy served on a plate. By late 1944, the reversal was complete. German prisoners were sending food packages home to Germany. Millions of parcels filled with American abundance arrived in starving households. Enemy captives fed families living under the regime that had promised victory. Even rationed America consumed more than Germany ever could. Sugar, meat, milk. Production statistics printed openly in newspapers showed that America was outproducing Germany even at war's peak. In 1945, prisoners watched newsreels of American soldiers handing chocolate and gum to German children. They saw concentration camps liberated, rations shared with survivors. The contrast was undeniable. When prisoners returned home, many were healthier than when they had been captured. Their families were not. They carried chocolate and coffee like treasure. They carried knowledge even more valuable. Those men became advocates for reconstruction, for cooperation, for abundance through production rather than conquest. They had seen a society wealthy enough to give ice cream to enemies. That idea reshaped post-war Germany. Coca-Cola returned in 1949. Ice cream parlors appeared. Supermarkets followed. Former prisoners knew that abundance stabilized societies. They had tasted it. Decades later, many still remembered the moment of revelation. The first fizz of Coca-Cola. The first spoonful of ice cream. Sensory proof that democracy worked. One veteran said his first Coke tasted like the future. Sweet, unnecessary, joyful, available to anyone. That drink contained everything Nazi Germany was not. In the end, the most powerful weapon America wielded was not force, but plenty. The ability to create so much that it could be shared casually, even with enemies. The war was won on battlefields, but an ideology was defeated by ice cream. And those who witnessed it carried that truth home, forever changed, knowing that freedom tasted sweet and fizzed like carbonation.